Hey y'all, Moses here. In today's video, we're going to be walking through my settings for Apex Legends. Now, just a quick note before we get started, this guide is meant to increase visibility to the point where spotting enemies is pretty easy. You don't lose too much in the way of visual fidelity because I don't want the game, especially a new game that has gorgeous art design like this one does, to look like total ass just to have the maximum frame rate. Now, I'll give you guys a couple of notes as we go through it if you want to go for maximum FPS, but this is kind of a hybrid guide, not a total FPS gain. So just wanted to let you know before we jump in. So let's take a look at the settings and get started. All right, so the first thing that I've changed just in general is to make my interact prompt style compact. Now that's just what you see as far as descriptions on weapons and stuff like that. If you've been playing the game for a while and you kind of know what you're looking for, putting this to compact makes the visual clutter a little bit easier to get over. So it reduces the size of tooltips, etc. on stuff on the ground. Button hints, I'm not sure why that's on, but it's now off. But regardless, again, this is just for people who are not really sure what your buttons do on the screen. If you don't know and you're still getting used to the game, you can leave this on. The damage feedback on crosshair, I just left this. This basically just tells you when shields break. This is important to leave as is. I've changed mine from the default of stacking for damage numbers to floating, so I get a consistent amount of feedback as to how much damage I've done. If it's stacking, this number will just increase to the point where it shows how much damage you've done, but this one is per hit, and I think that's important to note when you're doing damage to enemies to know exactly what you're doing. The third option is both, but I'd just say leave it on floating. For ping opacity, I left mine on default. You can set yours to faded if you want the ping to be a little bit more in the background or a little bit less important visually. I've left mine on default. Obituaries are just the kill feed. I'd leave that on for general information about what's going on in the game. Incoming damage feedback, you can set this to 2D if you like. You can do both, but I left mine at the default, which is 3D, and that's just to indicate where damage is coming from. Streamer mode is if you're streaming, I guess. I had mine on for a little while where it just hides all the names in the kill feed, but I'm not Summit or Lyric or Ninja or Shroud, so I can read who kills me. Usage sharing, this is, I don't know, if you're a conspiracy theorist that EA is going to take all your data and overthrow the planet, then you can disable this, but I leave mine on because I didn't know that was even on. So there it is. Anyway, don't know how bad I am, please, EA. Colorblind mode, you can mess with this if you have colorblind issues. Not as important as it has been in games like PUBG, where you kind of get better blood spatter and stuff like that. I left mine off here. Accessible chat features, that's just accessibility options, and the last two are as well. So let's move on now to the important bits, and that's mouse and keyboard. All right, so this is a big question I always get when I'm playing, and that's like, what's my sensitivity? I just did basic values here just because of it's kind of hard to determine where sensitivity should be in a game like Apex because it's so different than Fortnite and PUBG. I kind of copied my PUBG sensitivity at first, but I definitely changed it. I reduced my overall general sensitivity, and I actually increased my ADS sensitivity because characters move faster. I think I need a little bit more reactions from my movements when I'm down the sights in Apex. So if you're having trouble with low sensitivity, or if you feel like your sensitivity is too low, you might be right, because mine was. Obviously, mouse acceleration should be off. And unless you're a lunatic or, I don't know, you play a lot of flight sims or with the joystick, maybe leave your mouse invert off as well. Otherwise, I don't have too much recommendations as far as changing stuff is concerned, but one thing that I found useful is actually putting my crouch button on my mouse. So mine is mouse 4 because sliding is such an important part of the movement in this game. I just want it to be a natural thumb press similar to jumping, so that's kind of why I put it on mouse 4. My tactical ability is still mouse 5, and I put my ultimate as C. So that's just something to, if you've been playing with the default controls, maybe put your ultimate ability not on C, because you'll accidentally cast it like I've done so many times as I've gotten used to my new control scheme. Otherwise, I think pretty much everything is default. There's not a lot of changing. You can set up your pings to be custom, but the ping wheel is pretty intuitive. Same with the grenade wheel and the health wheel, all that stuff. So really much, pretty much default controls there. We'll skip over control, go straight to video. Full screen is always going to get you the best FPS. You can change your aspect ratio if you want. That's more so for your monitor, which you should be at your native resolution in game. So that's where you should be. My FOV is 104. You can do 90, which is kind of the classic default FPS mode, but I leave mine at 104, which mirrors what I have in PUBG, I think. I can't remember what my PUBG FOV is. Regardless, you can go all the way up to 110. Mine's 104 right now. I think I got that from Choco, so whatever. Let's just leave it. Just find whatever you think is good there. Colorblind mode again off. VSync disabled. Now there's a note about VSync a little bit later on in this video, so just I have to get out of the game to show you, so just bear with me. So VSync is off. You can also leave it to adaptive, which will unlock without doing the command line thing that I did, which will unlock your FPS to go above 144. So just a quick note: when your VSync is off, your frame cap will be hard limited to 144 FPS. If you have a 240 hertz monitor, you'll have to do a command line, but I'll get to that at the end, so I'll show you guys shortly. Anyway, you can do the adaptive resolution target. I have mine off because this will dynamically change your graphics settings, which I don't think I'm comfortable with, so I just left mine to 0. Okay, so let's get into the meat and potatoes. As far as anti-aliasing is concerned, I've left mine on TSAA. That's the highest anti-aliasing quality. I kind of like this because it reduces jagged lines and makes everything just a little bit more clear as far as moving characters are concerned. So I like to leave this on so characters are a lot more apparent when they're moving across a smooth background. Same thing here. I actually reduced this trying to fix a problem, but I'm using a 2080 Ti in my streaming setup right now at the hotel here. So I'm just going to leave mine at 8 gigabytes. You can basically match this to what your graphics card is. You can turn this off, but it's not going to get you too much of a performance increase. So just kind of match your graphics card, or turn it off, I guess, if you want. But so for texture filtering, I'm going to turn this all the way down to bilinear. This is the sharpness of surface details. I'm just turning this stuff down just for pure graphics performance. I don't need to know. I don't need to see the surface texture of the ground be ultra sharp, that kind of thing. Ambient occlusion, same thing. And then we turn all the shadow stuff down to low because shadows are bad when it comes to visibility and FPS. Same thing with the lighting options. I don't think I care much about volumetric lighting in a competitive shooter because I'm not taking a lot of time to look at the scenery. If I was playing The Witcher 3 or something else, this would maybe be left on for immersion purposes, but I'm turning that all down. So same thing with effects. Impact marks, you can kind of do whatever you like. How many impact marks show up. Again, you can basically disable these unless you're testing recoil patterns and you want to see what they do on the wall to see what recoil looks like. Ragdolls, this is a CPU specific thing, so if you have an older CPU and you want to reduce some of the load from a physics standpoint, you can turn this off. But I've left model detail on high because I want my guns and the characters to look as clear as possible and as detailed as possible, because that's what I look at the most, is my gun models and enemy characters and that kind of stuff. So this is kind of what I've set myself up for here. My mantra behind it is to be clear, but to also save some FPS where possible and also increase visibility as possible. So as far as audio settings are concerned, oh yeah, I guess I gotta apply that. As far as audio settings are concerned, I would reduce your dialogue volume. There's so much dialogue in the game that if it's the same level as your sound effects, it's kind of fatiguing over time. I've reduced the music volume as well a little bit, and I've turned off the lobby music volume because I listen to Spotify when I'm streaming and that kind of stuff. Sounds in the background, that's just off. Subtitles off, all this other stuff. So I kind of like this setup, but this is personal preference again. And if you don't want to listen to people talking to you, you can turn this to 0, but be a good teammate or just ping a lot. It's up to you. So that's kind of it, guys. I'm going to do one little bit out of the game and then we'll do a quick recap. All right, so I'll just quickly show you how to remove the FPS cap if you have a 240 hertz monitor, and that's to go into your game library in Origin, go to game properties, go to advanced launch options. This should be actually that, and type in -FPS_max space 0. Bam, just like that. Or I guess you can set it to 240 if you want, but I put mine to 0 so it's uncapped, and that way it's good to go for 240 hertz. Okay, so that is pretty much it for the Apex Legends settings guide. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave them down below. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and like this video. It really helps, and I appreciate it. You can also follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/wtfmoses and on Twitter at twitter.com/wtfmoses. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, I'll see you out there.